25 years a lifetime, living someone else's crime. How do you make it through each day when the world believes a lie? They can't see they got the wrong man, no matter how I try. I believe the system worked till I got caught inside the gears. Now I'm just a number serving someone else's years.
When you cage a wrong man, there's a ripple you don't see. 2 victims now, then 3, 4, 5, 6 more. Will I ever get out? Will they ever see? The man who did this crime, that man ain't me. Wrong man, they got the wrong man.
Can't anybody see?
Wrong man,
oh, the wrong man, and that wrong man is me. Wrong man, wrong man, wrong man. I fade out with the N-O and organ. Wake up in this concrete box, same walls every day. Count the hours, count the years, watch my life slip away. They looked at me with certainty, and the jury sealed my fate. Nobody heard my truth through that courthouse gate. 25 years is a lifetime when you're living someone else's crime. Every sunrise is a reminder that I'm running out of time. How do you make it through each day when the world believes a lie? Oh, they can't see they got the wrong man, no matter how I try. I believe the system worked till I got caught in the gears. Now I'm just a number serving someone else's year. I told myself to keep the faith that justice would prevail. But innocent until proven guilty ain't the truth inside this jail. They got their conviction, closed the case, moved on to someone new. Left me here with empty hands, asking what went wrong. What did I do? What did I do? Every appeal is denied, every door is slammed. They don't want to admit it, they cage an innocent man. How do you make it through each day when the world believes a lie? Oh, they can't see they got the wrong man, no matter how I try. I believe the system worked till I got caught in the gears. Now I'm just a number serving someone else's years. The system not just about locking up the guilty. Supposed to protect the innocent like me. But when you cage the wrong man, there's a ripple you don't see. There's no longer one victim, now there are 2. 2 becomes 3, 4, 5, 6 more. 'Cause the real criminal's still out there, creating victims you're not accounting for. Will I ever get out? Will they ever see the man who committed this crime? That man ain't me. How do you make it through each day when hope starts to wear thin? When the system that's supposed to save you is the one that locked you in. I believe the system worked. Now I'm drowning in my fears.
Live on the air. Trial Junkies United presents Justice After Dark with your host, Z.
Thank you, Doc. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Trial Junkies United presents Justice After Dark. Greetings to our trial junkies, our truth seekers, and our justice warriors. I'm Z, your storyteller in the wilderness of injustice, with my ride or die Doc, riding shotgun as we navigate the darkness where the predators hunt and the system fails. We're ready to shine a light on the forgotten stories society wants us to leave buried. And tonight we're diving into a case that's going to make every single one of you question what you know about the justice system. Doc, are you ready for this one?
I'm ready, but you're having fun with Moo.
Yeah, Moo's not in bed like she's supposed to be napping. She wants to participate. But we do need to thank Katrina, one of our mods, for bringing this one to my attention. And she also reminded me we hadn't done really a trial case lately. And hey, we are trial junkies also. So, hey, Pammy says hello, Moo Moo. So here we go. And this is the story.
Slander Moo.
I'm not slandering Moo.
No, you were talking about me.
Oh, I mean, they've already got an attorney in contact for Moo. She's got representation.
Uh-huh.
Okay, guys, here we go. And this is a story of Greg Kelley. And he was a high school football star from Leander, Texas. And his life was destroyed, but not by evidence, not by facts, not by a police investigation, because one really was never done. It was incompetent. It was lazy. They locked up an innocent teenager while the real predator walked free. So buckle up. The path ahead grows bumpy as we lead you through another section of the nightmare we call our justice system. Okay, therapist, she knows where Leander is. But before we dive in, I'm going to say something from the heart. Child predators, this is a case we all feel deeply about when we talk about child predators. And I don't think they should ever be released from jail if they're guilty. These are the crimes that destroy innocence, shatter lives, and create trauma that victims carry forever. There's no punishment severe enough for someone who hurts a child. But here's the thing, listen carefully. That's exactly why we have to get it right. When we lock up the wrong person, we're not just destroying an innocent life. We're letting the real predator stay free, and they're going to continue to hurt more children. We're betraying that victim twice, once by the assault and again by failing to secure justice. That 4-year-old boy in this case, he deserved to have the person who hurt him held accountable. Instead, the system rushed to judgment, chose an easy target, and stopped looking. And the person who actually harmed that child, he walked. That's not justice. It's a complete failure by everyone involved. And I believe child predators deserve the harshest penalties. Our justice system can impose upon them. But that means we have an absolute obligation to make sure we've got the right person. Anything less is not justice. It's just cruelty stacked on top of a tragedy. And let's talk about how badly they got this one wrong. In July of 2013, a 4-year-old boy, they called him LM, told his mother he had been SA'd at an in-home daycare center. And the daycare was run by Johnathan McCarty. And this is a picture of her on the stand. And living in the house were 2 teenage boys who actually looked remarkably similar. Greg Kelley and Shamma's son, Johnathan McCarty. Now, Greg was only staying there temporarily. Johnathan lived there full time. It was his home. But who was Greg Kelley? Why was he there? Well, Let's find out. You need to know who he was before they ripped his life totally apart. Greg at the time was a 17-year-old senior at Leander High School in Leander, Texas. He was a football star, and I mean a star. He was a team captain. The coaches literally had to kick him out of the weight room because he worked so hard. He was there in the morning, in the afternoon, completely dedicated to the game he loved. But he wasn't just some jock that was coasting. Greg was actually working hard in school, keeping his grades up. And he talks about that he was dyslexic, so that wasn't easy. He also had 2 part-time jobs in addition to football and his studies. So this was a young man that really had everything going together. He also had his high school sweetheart. And this was a kid who was going somewhere. He had dreams. He was building a future. He committed to play football at the University of Texas, San Antonio on a scholarship. Everybody was proud of him, and he was going to college. He was dating Gabri, and I hope I said Gabri's name right, Anderson. They were that couple, that really cute young couple. They're in love, and they're planning their future together, and they're inseparable. That was them. Yeah, and that was Moo that just walked back in. Oh, she's going to go nap now. Okay, good. Okay, now, this is actually McCarty, the picture. And Greg was close friends with him. And also his brother, one of his brothers, he has 4 older brothers. One of his brothers knew the family. McCarty, Johnathan, and Greg, they played football together. And so it was just normal that, they were buddies, not best friends, but they were close. So Kelley, because here's what most people don't know. In early 2013, January or February, Greg's dad had a massive stroke, Douglas. His father was in his 60s and wasn't very healthy, and he ended up in the hospital. Greg was devastated because he admired his dad. His dad was someone he looked up to. His older brothers, all 4, they were kind of gone, doing their thing. And Greg was still at home. His mom was working hard now to take care of Greg while dealing with her husband having a stroke. And if you've ever taken care of a loved one, it's a lot of work. And then Greg's mom was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So think about that. He's 17, going on 18 or close to that now. Both of his parents are facing serious medical crisis. He's essentially parentless, right? No one's going to watch over him. No one was there. He's trying to handle it, trying to be optimistic for his mom like any young man would. But he hadn't lived long enough to know how to deal with something like this. This is not something that, a lot of kids would know how to handle. Hey, Simi Sharp. And his mom, she had to have brain surgery. And here's the thing, it would have cost a fortune in the United States. So she went back to Guatemala where she had the surgery, and the cost was about 1/8 of what it would be in the US. The tumors were next to her optic nerve, and the doctor did give them the warning that she could lose her eyesight. And so that's exactly what happened. She ended up losing the eyesight in one eye. And so after she woke up and she realized that, she ended up staying in Guatemala for about 10 months. She lived with her family. She's recovering from brain surgery. And Doc can tell you personally, it takes a little bit to get over some brain surgery, right, Doc?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So back to what happened. So let's go back to the story. So there's the child, HM. He said that he was assaulted in Greg's room. He said the attacker wore SpongeBob pajamas and used lotion. Now, right there is where the Cedar Park Police Department should have done its job. So right off the bat, they screwed up. Because there wasn't just one teenage boy living in the house. In fact, there wasn't just Johnathan and also Greg. There was also a half-brother. So they should have been examining evidence. They should have been protecting that child by finding the right person. But they didn't bother with that. They just zeroed in on Greg because he was the new person living in the house. So he was the target. He was the outsider and the one that they decided to pick on. And even though there were witnesses that described the McCarty home as Grand Central Station because they had these children going in and out for daycare, the parents and Jonathan's friends were coming in and out of the house all the time. So let's be crystal clear. There's no physical evidence, zero, not a single piece of DNA, and which we know with a lot of child SA cases, let's be honest, there a lot of times isn't DNA, okay? But there's not a fingerprint, nothing on Greg's phone, and I mean nothing. Investigators examined over 9,000 images on his cell phone, found zero child adult-like pictures. You know what I'm talking about. Their entire case was built on the testimony of a 4-year-old child who said his attacker's name was Greg. But this is what's critical. We do believe children when they tell us they have been SA'd. That is our normal reaction, correct? But you also have to investigate because there's more than one person living in the house. He's 4. It was also stated that his father didn't report this right away, actually showed up over at the house and was telling Sharma about it. And Greg's brother, who was an acquaintance, a friend of the family, he went because he didn't want Greg over there when he heard that there were some allegations being made. And the father had kind of asked for money. So it sounds to me like if they could have offered him money, maybe nothing would have happened, which that in itself is a crime to me. Your son was SA'd. So it kind of makes you think, okay, did this really happen? Okay. So 2 weeks before this accusation ever came out, though, Greg had actually talked to his mom on the phone. And he told his mom that he wanted to get out of the house because stuff was happening in that home. He was not comfortable. And he told her he was kind of scared to be there. And he says, I don't want to do something that's going to ruin my future, because he had plans. He had his life kind of laid out for him, and he knew how important it was not to mess up. So he told her that Jonathan was kind of hanging out with the wrong people, was getting in trouble with some drug activity, and he just wanted no part of this. And his mom told him, I'm coming home, get back home. Moo, you need to take a nap and quit talking. She sounds like a 40-year-old smoker, but I promise we don't let her smoke.
Meow.
No one smokes. Nobody smokes here, people. So his mom's, she was going to come home. So in late May or early June of 2013, Greg goes back home. He's glad to be back. Shama, she was kind enough to continue letting him use that extra family car so he could get to his practices and school and the different things. And so this was going to be between his junior and senior year. So we know he's committed to UT San Antonio. He's ready. He's working. He's attending Champions Course, a summer program that kept kids active. He's working out. He's off the streets, away from video games, because that's what the whole activity was for these kids, to get them physically fit. So 80% of this team did it. And since Greg was the captain, he was encouraged, you need to lead by example. Now, he's a teenager, but he had a future planned, a girl he loved, good grades, work ethic, and dreams. His mom had been through a tremendous medical issue, his father. And so on July 2013, 2 months after he moved out of the McCarty home, so he moved out, he told his mom, that things were going to go good. He's ready, But all of a sudden, he gets this call about this accusation. Okay. And they're investigating this child that's saying that he has touched him or had him touch him. We're not going into details. But Detective Daly, and this is a picture of Detective Daly, who really needs a job at McDonald's because he's not much of a detective. I mean, that's just my opinion.
You think you'd make it at McDonald's?
I don't know. You do have to follow some directions.
Well, yeah.
And I don't know if he could handle those because he didn't listen to the judge. So I don't think he could. But his investigation is flawed right from the start, you guys. He doesn't conduct an interview or an investigation. He just zeroes in right on Greg. And the people he talks to are children. So he interviews, the young 4-year-olds. And he doesn't know how to interview a child that's been SA'd. So really, he should not have been in the room because when the person that's supposed to do it did it, she wasn't getting the answers he was getting. Well, then he starts going and trying to question other little kids because he wants a bigger case. He's decided that this kid's it and he's going to get him. But he didn't even bother interviewing, people at the house. He didn't even really go look at the house where this assault supposedly occurred. And this all came out in 2017 during a hearing where he had to admit under questioning, he never even followed up on Johnathan McCarty as a possibility. He also named the victim during a forensic interview. So when he's interviewing the child, he's naming people that he shouldn't be. He also revealed he didn't visit the site where the abuse happened, like I said, which was the daycare, which would have been important because the child said it happened in Greg's room, right? Now, when he said it happened in Greg's room, he talked about the trophies. There are trophies in the room, there's more than one bed in the room. Well, that wasn't Greg's room. That was Jonathan's room. And in fact, LM's mother made the comment, or HM's mother made the comment that when she went to pick her child up, he was in a room with trophies where he was napping. So see, even the mother said it was a room with trophies. So we know which room it was. It did not belong to Greg. He also admitted to deleting emails from the CPS investigator, Child Protection Services. The detective deleted their messages because he knew, even though it was against police policy, he deleted these messages. Now, the father told Officer Freed that HM likely was essayed on July 12th. Well, Freed put his offense date in his initial offense report. But Kelley had already moved out. He wasn't living in the house then because he went back home on June 11th. They're saying it was July that the child was assaulted. Now, Daly backdated the offense date range in his probable cause affidavit supporting Kelley's arrest warrants between December of 2012 and June of 2013. So he's changing reports now. Katrina, you're right. Have, a detective going in there with a gun on his hip in front of a 4-year-old, that you don't handle the child that way. You have to be very careful because you cannot put words in their mouth. The detective later testified that he chose the 6-month date range because that was the period that Kelley lived with the McCarty family. Okay, so now you're admitting that you deliberately moved the date because this is when your victim or your suspect lived there. Yeah. He's not investigating. He's just making circumstances fit what he thinks was the date of the crime. Ken, you're right. It takes very special training. It's not something easily done, and not everyone should be or is allowed to do it. Therapist, yeah. You'd have to be a very experienced clinician for this. That it would be tough duty. It would be tough. Okay. And let's see. Whoops. Dandelion is, yeah. Children, they will lie at times to protect, And so that's why you need someone that's very experienced. But Daly has maintained, he still says he did a good, thorough investigation. Yeah, right.
He wouldn't know
more
what
like-
that is.
No, it's like Barney Fife running the department.
Mm-hmm.
So they arrest him and book him for HM's account, right? But because this bumbling detective gets another child, LM, to make allegations, they go and arrest him a second time, as if they haven't ruined his life enough. Of course, LM ends up recanting. He says none of it happened. He can't remember where the house was when they show him pictures. He goes, is that in Florida? So, I mean, they really just messed it up. Oh, I'm sorry for slandering Barney Fife. So LM, they can't get him on those charges because LM totally takes everything back. And that's right then should have been like this huge red flag that you have this detective that has kind of put this child in a position to say these things that aren't true because he said Greg didn't touch him. So those charges get dropped because that child denies everything. But they didn't investigate Johnathan. They didn't look at his computer or his cell phone. They didn't interview the witnesses that could have given them critical information. They didn't even follow the obvious leads. The plea, and then, of course, when they get ready to go to court, they offer him a plea deal. And this is where it gets insidious because the prosecution knew their case was weak. They had no physical evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, just this one 4-year-old's testimony. The other one's not going to work out. So what did they do? They came at Greg with plea deals, not once, but twice. By the second time, I think it was only like he would have to register and admit he was a sex offender. And then they were going to give him probation. He wouldn't have to go to prison. Now he's 18 years old. He's worried about his parents. He walks out of the room and he contacts his girlfriend. She was his rock. I mean, she was his rock. And she told him, you can't admit that. It's not true. And that was what was bugging him because he knew he couldn't stand there and tell them that he was a sex offender when he was not. But he's looking at a 25 to 99 year sentence if he's convicted. But in the back of your mind, hey, you're thinking they really don't have anything because why else would they practically be letting me walk away with 5 years probation, right? So they roll the dice and it doesn't work because the system, it didn't work for him. Even though they didn't have the evidence to really prove the case. He doesn't take the plea deal. He goes to trial, but it's stacked against him because of the way that everything goes. The one little child that's supposed to come in and give a visual, this is him, like threw himself on the floor and wouldn't look. Well, right there, if you're in the jury, what would you think? The kid's scared of this man. Yeah, you're right, Ken. So this takes the kind of courage most of us couldn't even imagine because Greg knew what was at stake. He had just committed to play football at UT. His future's there, his girl. And this is a picture of Gabri, and she is amazing and strong. And she told him she was going to be with him for this whole thing. Even when he tried to tell her, you go live your life, you don't have to worry about me, she put him right in his place and said, I'm going to be here for you. So that's a strong woman. But he couldn't say guilty because it was a lie. He couldn't lie. And he didn't want to live as a registered sex offender. You know, who would? So he goes ahead and they go to trial. And there are going to be those people that say, why didn't you just take the deal? Because innocent people shouldn't have to plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit just because the system is broken. He's ended up in 2014, he's convicted of super aggravated SA of a child and sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was 18. 25 years. He did nothing wrong. He's sent to a maximum security prison while the real perpetrator remains free. He kept maintaining his innocence. Gabri, her family, his family, they had supporters that were behind him. But at least one juror said that he didn't think Greg was guilty.
But yet
He
he
said-
let him go to prison.
Yeah, this is what he said. He said the kid had his whole life ahead of him. You know, he had a scholarship to play football, everything. We took that away from him. We found an innocent person guilty. He said, I had a gut feeling he wasn't guilty. They didn't think the prosecution had proved it beyond a reasonable doubt that Greg did it. He said what happened was it was close to midnight and the jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision. So the judge told them he was going to sequester them. And the jury turned on this juror because he was the holdout. Now, this is the same judge that Greg says actually slept through a lot of the trial. Great judge. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many failures in this case. And because he was the holdout, they all were after him, saying, we need to go home. We want to go home. And it was basically, y'all want to go home just for y'all. But the pressure from the other jurors, he eventually he broke. And he went ahead and voted with him. And there were probably a couple of jurors, he said, in there that shouldn't have been there. Now, I don't know what he means by that comment. But after the conviction, one of the jurors made the comment, well, what's going to happen now? And he said, think about that. They had just voted to send an 18-year-old to prison for 25 years, and they didn't even understand what they had done. What's going to happen now? The holdout juror said he got in that person's face and said, did you not understand what he just did? He signed his life away for 25 years because we convicted him. And that juror said, trying to live with that decision, the first 2 weeks after the trial were the worst. You know, a man goes to work, gets home, has a cold beer. I couldn't do that to ease it. I have a really hard time living with myself, living with that guilt. You might have just ruined somebody's life. He said, I'm sorry. You know, he said if he could talk to Greg, he'd say, I'm sorry, I tried, but I couldn't. So not only was Greg Kelley innocent, the jury knew there was reasonable doubt, and they convicted him anyway because they were tired and they wanted to go home. Think about that. And I mean, that's why jury do.
Thinking about what's going to happen to him in prison.
No, because let's face it, child sex offenders are not highly regarded in prison.
Nope.
And, you know, they're not that nice. But we'll skip most of the prison talk. He did have to fight. He did, you know, there's some interviews where he talked about having to put up his dukes because he was told that by some of the older men when he was in the jail before he got sent to prison, you're going to have to fight. Don't back down. So, you know, he was able to do that. And he also had been given a Bible, and he has, you know, really applied himself to the scriptures and is very religious and found a relationship with God. And I think that's what really, between Gabby and that's what really got him through. But let's jump to 2017. Williamson County, they get a new DA, okay? His name is Sean Dick. And he actually does something awesome. He looks at the case. He assigns Texas Ranger Cody Mitchell to investigate. Now, Ranger Mitchell says it was horrifying what he found, and everyone listening should be horrified, because he said, I spent hundreds of hours on this case. He reviewed court documents, transcripts, photographs, and handwritten notes. He listened to recordings and interviewed approximately 50 people. He interviewed people, not detective, fumbles a lot. But, this guy did, the ranger. He actually did the work that the Cedar Park police should have done in the first place. And he found 3 viable suspects, not just Greg Kelley as one, Johnathan McCarty, and Jonathan's half-brother. And here's the kicker. The only evidence against Greg was what came out at trial. And that's why he was not allowed to go for a retrial with whatever evidence had been presented, because he had made a deal for the 25 years. Okay, so he wouldn't be able to get a new trial on any evidence that they had already used. It would only be on new evidence. So the evidence against Johnathan, this is going to get good. And in the meantime, while Greg's in jail, Jonathan's busy trying to hit on his girlfriend, Gabby, and trying to move, just take over Jonathan's life, trying to be the dude on the football team that everybody looks to. So he's really, he's a slime bucket. No other description for Johnathan. But in October of 2014, 3 months after he's convicted, a young man named Jade McLaughlin was at a party. There's about 13 people there, mostly from Leander High School. Now, he heard something that changed everything. Johnathan McCarty was panicking, talking to his girlfriend Mariah at the time in a side room. And this guy heard him. And he said, it was me. I was the one who did it. I'm the boss. And I'm the one that did this to the child. And I'm not saying exactly what he did. And then that was the one thing the little boy had said was, the boss did it to me. Okay. Now, Mariah's response is, just lie. Now, Jade, he went and told his mom. He told the coach, and he waited for justice. But 3 years later, Greg's still in prison. Now, there is a story that supposedly Johnathan even tried to attack Jade in a sex assault. So there's that. So Johnathan just seems to be a loose cannon. Little slime toad. So, and he's still free. But wait, there's more. In 2016, a woman named JC Brown met Johnathan as neighbors. They smoked together, and I'm not talking cigarettes, had a relationship, and then he told her, I did that to the little boy. Greg didn't do it. I did it. Now, JC thought he was high, so she pushed it aside, but she later saw the case resurface on Facebook, and she realized she needed to speak up. We have 2 confessions now. One he was drinking and one he was high. But let's make it clear, a lot of people, when they're intoxicated, truth comes out. They will say truthful things. Yes, exactly, Doc. So we have 2 different people that he has gone and said this to. And meanwhile, Greg's still in prison. Now, what about the SpongeBob pajama pants that the kid said the guy was wearing? Well, the prosecution disclosed this detail on the day of the trial, July 7th, 2014. too late for the defense to properly investigate. Greg's attorney asked him if he had wore these SpongeBob pajama pants. And actually, even the ranger came back and asked him. And Greg said he really didn't want to have to answer, but he would be truthful and say he had wore them one time. Because when Sharma would do the laundry, at times she would mix the boys' clothes up. And so one time there was nothing left in his drawer, so he wore them. But here's what nobody, until Ranger Mitchell came along and really investigated, he talked to Angel Perez, J.C. Brown, and others who testified that Johnathan wore SpongeBob pajamas constantly around the house, at school, at other people's homes, outside, everywhere. There were pictures of him wearing these pajama pants. Of course, when the ranger asked him about them, he knew nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. His mother even fessed up that they were a Christmas present. So, yeah. So Johnathan wore these quite a bit. He was known to wear them. They weren't something that Greg was known to wear. So even though Johnathan went into full denial, there was enough evidence that, hey, these were his. They did not belong to Greg. Okay, so now we have Jonathan's room, Jonathan's pants. Think about that. And all the time, remember that great detective? Yeah. He's a brain trust. But the ranger, of course, knew when he denied it that he was lying because he had enough evidence. And another piece of evidence that ended up undermining the prosecution's timeline is Greg's attorney. Keith Hampton laid out Greg's actual schedule. Greg had school in the mornings. He was at football practice in the afternoon. Coaches had to literally kick him out of the weight room. He had 2 jobs. He was making good grades in school. So when did he have time to spend hours with these children? He didn't. In fact, if they would have followed the evidence, they would have found the day that this supposedly happened, he was helping his brother move in another city. He wasn't even there. He was not there. And that's why a piece of advice he gives out is have your location on your phone turned on, because eventually that really helped. He didn't have enough time in the day to be spending hours with these children. But Johnathan, he lived there full time. He was left alone with these kids. There was a month before this all came out that Johnathan and his half-brother were the ones in the home, not Greg. Greg had moved out. Now, Angel Perez, a fellow football player who stayed at the McCarty household during the spring and summer of 2013, he even testified that Greg never wore those pajama pants. So even more people were coming out and saying, no, he doesn't wear those. No, he wasn't around. A couple of the other young men, Joel and Esteban, found disturbing photos on Jonathan's unlocked phone. They were photographs of children without clothing on, pictures of young boys 4 to 6 years old, one in the bathtub and one on the toilet. Now, of course, he tried to laugh it off as, well, those are just my nephews. Don't you have, their cute little naked photos? And they're like, no, nobody has naked photos of, no. It's disgusting, dude. And Joel said his phone was open and I looked through the pictures and he had a whole bunch of pictures of it. It was just a whole bunch of pictures of kids, both girls and boys. And on one of the pictures, I saw a picture of a kid in the bathtub naked. So Johnathan told him that his mother ran a daycare. Like, that's the reason why you have naked little kids in photos. And Esteban said, I saw a picture of a little boy, probably about 3 to 5, naked in the bathtub. Just like a normal shot on Jonathan's phone. Like I'd take a picture of my cat sitting in the chair. And these boys were freaked out. Now, Joel told Greg's girlfriend, and their friend Daniela. And of course, his attorney makes the comment that nobody told her. She's a whole other case, guys. Oh, this chick. I'm sorry. Oh, man. Patricia Cummings. This is her. She later explained the weekend before the jury trial began, a person communicated to me that Greg's girlfriend told him that a third person, unidentified to me, told her that a fourth person told the third person that someone had seen what appeared to be child adult photos on Johnathan McCarty's cell phone. She says it was fourth-hand information, an 11th hour rumor. See, her whole thing was she was fighting this case as these little boys were lying. It's not true. Not that there could have been other people that did this. Just they were lying. So she handicapped the case right there by not giving an alternative to who it could have been. She had an investigator who she, even at the fourth hour, could have said, hey, we need to get a subpoena. We need to look at this phone. But no. Now, one of the things, how did she become his attorney? Well, Swarma McCarty said, this is our family attorney. And she took the case. She had represented 3 of Jonathan's brothers, including the half-brother that was living at the home at the time. Yeah. That's kind of what I would call conflict of interest.
Possibly. Just possibly.
She never even told Greg or his family that she had represented Jonathan's family in this way. And they were on charges that would actually, one brother went to prison. So these were serious sex charges. So there were some issues, and Greg and his family didn't know. And Cummings also said that she didn't know who, Chambers or Esteban were. So she decided the investigation would be counterproductive. Now, I'm sorry, if you're an attorney, you have a young man's life on the line, and you get a tip. I'm sorry, even Perry Mason, honey, would have got, Paul Drake out there looking and finding the information out. He always pulled one out of the hat. He did. Let's be honest. So Chambers or Cummings, you're just a lousy attorney, in my opinion.
Possibly in others too.
I think so.
Yeah.
Now, Joel Chambers explained that he didn't come forward. He said, I didn't want to be part of all of this. Esteban said he left it alone because I never wanted to be part of the trial. I hope you both feel guilty now, because what if it was you one day? Would you want Greg to come and speak for you? I would think so. Just remember, if you ever get called to trial, don't remember Greg's number, because you left him hanging. But Greg's a good guy, and he'd probably be kind. But when the forensic expert, Mike Adams, examined the McCarty family computer in 2016 and 2017, he found pictures of naked children under Johnathan McCarty's user profile. Adams testified that Jonathan's activity under his profile was really almost completely porn. Skype chats, porn chats, all kinds of porn data. Johnathan had images of naked children in a folder on the computer. And according to Jonathan's statement to the Ranger, the children were his relatives. However, both Mike Adams and Ranger Mitchell testified that they considered some of these images to be adult child photos. Let me say that again. The person who confessed twice, owned the SpongeBob SquarePants pajamas, had photos of naked kids on his cell phone and his computer. He has still never been charged, you guys. This is a pattern of behavior. And Rosalinda Castile, who helped at the daycare, even provided an affidavit stating that Jonathan told the children to call him the boss. And that was a detail that exactly matched what was said in the confession to Jade McLaughlin. An 8-year-old boy at the daycare confused Johnathan and Greg. So did the victim's mother, because the mother said Greg's room where the assault happened had the trophies. So again, they misidentified. It wasn't that the little boy was lying. They misidentified who it was. Johnathan kept a Facebook picture of a shirtless boy from the daycare. The boy was wearing someone else's bottoms, posing in the bathroom, and appeared to have just showered. Johnathan frequently had children in his room and walked around the daycare barely clothed. At the time, he ingested substances such as embalming fluid. Jade McLaughlin, there were 4 other women who have accused Johnathan of SAing them after drugging them with drugs that they do for SAing women. You know, I can't say the R word. We don't want to upset anybody. Now, one thing that the prosecution the defense tried to say after all this was coming out and charges were coming up that Cummings had did a crap job was they said, well, Greg didn't actually really participate in helping investigate Johnathan. Now, I don't think I believe them. I don't know what kind of questions they asked him. They might have asked him questions he didn't know the answers to. But I don't think it's a situation that Johnathan was not helping the case. You just weren't looking for it. Because you had ties to the family. She was friends with Sharma. I mean, this case is just so wrong. You know, but the one good thing she did was recommend Keith Hampton as his attorney, a new attorney. And Greg says he's a bulldog. He's loyal, but if you mess with him, he's coming after you. And Miss Cummings, she messed with him. So he went for her because she was ineffective in the trial. And that was one of the grounds for overturning the conviction. So to break that down, the city park police didn't do. They didn't interview witnesses. They didn't examine Johnathan's computer or cell phone. Never investigated other teenage boys living in the house who resembled Greg. They didn't follow up on reports about these photos of naked children. They didn't investigate Johnathan's pattern of inappropriate behavior or his brothers. One brother was in jail. They didn't look for physical evidence. They didn't investigate anybody. I mean, this is just the worst case of bumbling missteps and rush to judgment. You know, and the one guy said, I would be scared to death to think I could end up in the same position as Greg Kelley because of how this investigation was run. Now, one of the heroes in the case is State District Judge Donna King. That was when actually Greg was allowed out before he was freed totally. They did let him out because of all these claims that were coming up of ineffective counsel and the things that were not done. And he didn't know he was getting let out. His attorney was good at not getting him too hyped up with excitement that we're going to get you out. We're going to do this. He just kept working like a bulldog. And so he got fun surprises, like coming out and getting to see his girl and his family. And I'm sure that meant a lot. Gabri is really a testament. But here's the judge, Judge Donna King. And she wrote a 10-page order. And she said that Greg's due process rights were violated during the flawed Cedar Park police investigation. And they eventually exonerated him. And that's not easy to do. And they called it a systematic failure. But you know what? It's really a long road to freedom because of the time he spent just being in jail, then going to trial, 3 years in prison, all for a crime he never committed, going to prison with the title of being an SA offender of children. Yeah, it's horrendous. And Gabby has stood beside him through it all. And even though those 3 years were stolen, in August of 2017, Judge Donna King granted him bond. And that's the picture when we saw him getting to hug her. And she said that if she could, because of these failures, they should have identified Johnathan McCarty as a viable suspect. He was arrested. He was on probation violation for a drug charge and was held on $450,000 bond. Texas Ranger Cody Mitchell testified he had identified 3 suspects, like we talked about. But even as Greg walked out of jail that day in August 2017, his attorney reminded him at that point it wasn't over yet. Eventually it would be over and he would be exonerated. And he said, when Greg Kelley walks out, he does not walk back in. That's a scary place to be. He was confident. He said he laid out the evidence to the judge. Would a reasonable jury have convicted Kelley if they knew that Johnathan McCarty was left alone with these children for at least a month, wearing the pajama pants, with child adult photos on his computer and a cell phone, and that he confessed twice? If you knew that, if each of you were on the jury, I'm not asking you to convict Johnathan, but would you have convicted Greg? And I think we all know the answer is no, because Greg didn't have that stuff. He didn't have the child adult photos on anything. So he said the 2 confessions over 2 years by 2 different people, very solid, very credible. I don't see how we can be convicted. He said the answer was obvious. No reasonable jury would have convicted him because the jury had reasonable doubt. And one of the jurors made the comment that they didn't give us an alternative suspect. Okay, therapist, someone screenshot that for me. So I got that. I'll look that case up. So he did walk out, but it took, you guys, 6 years before he actually got to walk exonerated. He said, the next few hours are going to change my life forever. It's something we've been waiting for a very long time. After this day, my life starts. And the judge said she declared him innocent. She said it is truly a systematic failure. People in the courtroom wiped away tears as they watched the long pursuit to clear Greg's name finally come to an end. She apologized. She says, I cannot undo the damage done. I can't reclaim the years you've lost or restore your life to what it was when you were a senior in high school. But she could let him out and exonerate him. And thankfully he did get exonerated. And like when he addressed people, he told them the truth and nothing but the truth was the goal here, as he was hugging family and taking pictures. And he was 24 years old then. He said, it's fair to say I can appreciate freedom more than anybody right now. Just a little more than about an hour after he arrived, Greg Kelley walked out of the courthouse a free man, promising to pick up life he had been forced to leave behind. Now, he did go on. Him and Gabby ended up marrying. They have a baby girl. He started his own business. They do tomahawks, tomahawk throwing, which I think some of you, if you've done that, it's supposed to be fun. You know me with sharp objects. They wouldn't let me do that. I would probably hurt myself.
Yes, you would.
I'm kind of klutzy. But what happened to Johnathan? He never got charged with SA or even the child adult photos. And this was really the one place where that district attorney, Sean Dick, he screwed up. He said, absent any extraordinary evidence or a confession, I do not anticipate ever charging Johnathan McCarty with this crime. Sometimes you have clues that and leads and motive, but the bottom line is that when you are going to take someone to trial, I don't believe we're going to be able to do so based on the evidence we have now. 2 confessions weren't enough. The photos weren't enough. The lies weren't enough. The pattern of behavior wasn't enough. The investigation into the child's assault remains open. The Rangers plan to keep it open until they exhaust all possible leads. And they said there is that third suspect, which is his half-brother. And Johnathan, he did get charged for essaying adult women. And he pleaded guilty to unlawful restraint, drug possession, and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. 4 years for essaying women and drugging them. While Greg served 3 years of a 25-year sentence, and he didn't even commit a crime. And stop and think about it. That child never got justice. That little boy is scarred for life. Never got justice. And I think that's one thing we have to stop and think. What was done to Greg was horrendous. My heart goes out to him. But my heart goes out to that little four-year-old boy that was brave enough to speak out. But unfortunately, the adults in the room didn't know their job. And they did not handle it properly. Greg did go on to play some football at Eastern Michigan University. So he did get to have somewhat of a football dream. But I love his axe throwing companies called Tomahawk. And he makes targets. And it's really cool. And he said, I spent a lot of my time in the craft shop at the prison. So that's how he learned to do some of that crafty work. And he now sells them the targets. I think he has I don't know if it's on Etsy or I can't remember, but he also has 2 traveling vans where they can go to parties and people can have events and do this. And they even go to Formula One events. He says, one thing I realized in prison is that I know how to spend time alone. So I'm okay with being alone. But I've also missed hanging out with people. People just explode with excitement and enthusiasm. So if I could be part of that in anybody's life, whether it's helping with team building events for companies or just providing an awesome experience for a kid's birthday party, that would be awesome. And that's why I do it. So he does have a podcast. There are a lot of podcasts that he's gone on and he's spoken on these events. There was also a documentary that you can watch, but I tried to combine a lot of the information along with court documents that I was able to get, because some of those court documents are a lot of pages, and I got as much as I could get in here because this is really a long story, but he said there's a way to still love, still move forward, still grab your life by the horns and go get after it. He said, I wanted to be a better person than when I came in, not just for me, but for this woman who stood by my side, for my future daughter I now have. And he said, I wanted so badly to be a dad and for that to get robbed from me to get football back, which I did. He should have been playing at 18, but he had to wait till he was older. Now he's got his little baby and his wife, and we wish him the best because he's been through a horrendous experience that no one should have been through. And these people should all be ashamed. That's a picture of his mama and him and his girl. She is so beautiful. They're just a cute couple. And he does running. This is the attorney that really helped him. Let's give kudos to him because this dude knew exactly what to do to help this young man. And he didn't let his relationship with that other attorney he realized she screwed up big time. So kudos to him because he was good. But let's quickly go over some of our missing people because this is important. Remember, when you're out and about, please put that cell phone down, look at faces. People at times will leave voluntarily and then something happens and they can't get home. We know trafficking is real. It happens. People get hidden in plain sight. So if you notice something's off or you see someone, trust those instincts, call the authorities. Don't worry about, oh, what if I'm wrong? You know what? That's their job. Let them figure it out. You just do what you know because you could save a life by making that call. And that's what's important. And our first person is Kelston Ballantine. He's 12 years old. He went missing on January 27th from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Canada. He was last seen at 5:15 p.m. on the 27th in the 100 block of 16th Street West. He's approximately 5'5", 155 pounds. He has black hair, brown eyes. He was last seen wearing a light gray Nike sweater, black joggers, and black shoes with a black hat. He had a blue camo bag. So if anybody knows Kelston Ballantine's whereabouts, contact Prince Albert Police Service at 306-953-4222. You can also submit an anonymous tip to Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. Also, Andrea Isabel Houston. Pacheco. Thank you, Doc. I count on you. She's 14, you guys. She's been missing since January 16th. Another one out of Canada, Winnipeg, Manitoba. She was last seen in the 100 block of Rochester Avenue at 9 a.m. She has brown eyes, brown hair. She's 5'5" and weighs 75 pounds. Contact the Missing Persons Unit at 204-986-6250 or the Bear Clan at 204-794-3568. Okay, let's get her found. These guys are young. The next is Jada Alexis Dial. She's only 17. She's been missing since January 16th from Cumberland County, South Carolina. She has black hair, brown eyes. She's 5'4". She weighs 120 pounds. She was last seen a gray zip-up hoodie, wide leg blue jeans, and black Crocs. She was seen at the 4700 block of Clinton Road at 6:30 a.m. getting on the school bus. And then poof, Detective W. Lee at 910-677-5473 or contact Fayetteville, Cumberland County Crime Stoppers 910-483-8477. Remember, if you spot them and you're in a different state, call 911. Our next one is Trayston Paskiman.
Paskiman.
Paskiman?
I would. That's it. I
Okay.
would guess. So
I'll go with that, Doc. 12 years old. 12. Been missing since January 22nd from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Canada. Got a couple from Prince Albert. He was last seen on January 22nd at 2026, around 2:50 p.m. in the 2700 block of 10th Avenue West in Prince Albert. Trayston was wearing a blue Golden State Warriors hat, white Nike hoodie with a black stripe across the top, and black jeans. Brown eyes, dark hair, it's long. He's 5 foot and weighs 120 pounds. If you know anything, Prince Albert Police at 306-953-4222 or Crime Stoppers 1-800-222-8477. It's very important. So this case we went over tonight, you guys, it should terrify us because it could happen to anyone. To Greg Kelley, he was a kid. He had a loving girlfriend, supportive family, and eventually the resources to fight back. But it could happen to any one of us. It happens because the police were lazy. The attorney wasn't upfront and was dishonest, because they picked a suspect and they stopped investigating, because they ignored evidence, because they didn't care enough about finding the truth. It happened because a jury was pressured into convicting someone they knew they had reasonable doubt. I mean, that's what reasonable doubt's for. If you don't think so, it's not guilty. It happened because the jury wanted to go home more than they wanted justice. And a 4-year-old is victimized. The 4-year-old doesn't get justice. They locked up an innocent teenager and let the predator walk free. And he's out. He spent those 4 years in jail, and he's out walking around, and Lord knows every woman and child should fear that man. And Greg deserves justice, and that little boy deserves justice. And neither of them got it when it mattered the most. And the juror who changed the vote, he said he should be exonerated for everything. His name needs to be cleared. And he's right. But let's always remember that every predator, every killer, they depend on our silence. So don't give it to them. Every wrongful conviction depends on investigators who stop looking for the truth once they found a convenient suspect. So if you know something, speak up. Don't be like those other people that they heard something, but they didn't want to get involved. Because that wasn't a mannequin. It never is. Remember, silence is betrayal. And this is why we do what we do. This is why we shine lights in dark places. This is why we tell the stories that make the people uncomfortable. Because silence is betrayal, and we won't be silent. If you have a story you want us to look at, send it to trialjunkiesunited@gmail.com. Until next time, you guys, please stay informed, stay compassionate, keep seeking justice and seeking truth. Keep demanding justice. Never stop speaking up. I also forgot to thank Frank for the coffee he sent last week, or it's Thursday. My days kind of go together, guys. I thank you for being here. Hey, Doc, why don't you say goodnight to our family here?
Yeah, okay. Good night, Doc.
He's so silly. We love you all. Remember, the criminals never stop, so neither do we. Until the next time, you keep fighting for justice. We'll see you Thursday night, and we'll see what we come up with. We're supposed to have an interview with a very remarkable woman. So we love you. Moo's gone to bed. It's time for me to go find out what Doc's up to. Ciao, and enjoy the next song, you guys.
Opened the gates today and said, you're free to go. They found out they had a wrong man, but they won't let it show. My mama cries every night, I can see it in her eyes. It took over 3 years before they found the truth beneath the lies. I can finally breathe, but can you call this justice? When they know they were wrong, but won't admit it to us. Is it really justice when they let the innocent go? They found out they had the wrong man, but they don't want you to know. The predator still walks the streets, I did some of his time. The chief of police won't admit the mistake, won't cross that line. My own attorney had conflicts, I'm the one who paid the price. So tell me, is this justice, or just saving face twice over? I walk these streets as a stranger in a world I don't know. Took over 3 years to find the truth, while I was down below. No apology, no admission, just an early release. They know they caged the wrong man, yet they won't give me peace. I'm telling my story now, cause silence is betrayal. Justice should protect the innocent, admit when the system fails. Is it really justice when they let the innocent go? They found out they had the wrong man, but they don't want you to know. The predator still walks the streets. I did some of his time. The chief of police won't admit the mistake, won't cross that line. My own attorney had conflicts, I'm the one who paid the price. So tell me, is this justice, or just saving face twice over? We just want justice, real justice, not just silence. Admit the truth and end the violence. We just want justice, say you got it wrong. We just want justice, I've been innocent all along. I'm free to walk away, but the damage is done. They know they had the wrong man, but they won't tell anyone. The system's supposed to protect us and find the truth, but they'd rather hide their mistake than give me back my youth. I can finally breathe, but the fight ain't over until they admit they're wrong. This story won't have a closure. We just want justice, admit you had the wrong man. We just want justice, that's all we're asking for. Just justice.